He said the ship was caught by the storm and couldn't head into the wind. They were facing difficulties. They're scared. So he said, we took such a violent battering from the storm. The storm battered them. It was tossing them to and fro. But Apostle Paul was not going to give up. He's heading to his destination, which was Europe. He said by the next day, they began to throw the cargo overboard. I have to skip all this. I have to skip this. Let me go straight to, they were shipwrecked and blah, blah, blah. A lot of things happened to them. But I want you to see that when Paul, now they've been through all that. In chapter 28, it says, once safely on shore, we found out that the island was called Malta. So they're getting closer to Europe now. Or maybe they're in Europe, because Malta's in Europe. It's an island in between Africa and Europe, next to Lampedusa and Palermo in Italy. The islanders showed us unusual kindness. They built a fire and welcomed us all because it was raining and cold. They were nice to Paul and his people when they came offshore, when they got to Malta. Paul gathered a pile of brushwood, and as he put on the fire, that's not where I'm going. A snake bit him. Nope, that's not where I'm going. The people expected him to die. That's not where I'm going. They said he was a god. There was an estate nearby that belonged to Publius, the chief official of the island. He welcomed us to his home and for 3 days entertained us hospitably. His father was sick in bed. That's not where I'm going. No, that's not where I'm going. They honored us in many ways. And when we were ready to sail, they furnished us with supplies. You see, Paul has already preached in Malta, and they welcomed him. They were very hospitable towards him and his people. And now Paul is sailing off again. They honored Paul in Acts 28, verses 10. They honored him in many ways, but Paul's about to sail off again. Acts 28, verses 11. The arrival at Rome. They're about to arrive in Rome after what they suffered in their ships trying to get to Europe from Africa. It says, after 3 months, we put out to sea in a ship that had wintered in the island. It was an Alexandrian ship with the figurehead of the twin gods Castor and Pollux. We put in at Syracuse and stayed there for 3 days. From there we set sail again to Rhegium. The next day south wind came up. And on the following day we reached Puteoli. This is where I'm going. This is the eureka of my teaching. It says the next day the south wind came up as Apostle Paul was sailing. They're trying to get to Italy. And on the following day we reached Puteoli. There we found some brothers who invited us to spend a week with them. And so we came to Rome. The brothers there had heard that we were coming. You see, this is what I'm trying to teach here. Paul said that the next day, as they were sailing and coming towards Italy, the wind came up, and the following day we reached Puteoli. Puteoli is in Italy. There we found some brothers who invited us to spend a week with them. Paul was trying to say that as he was heading towards Puteoli in Italy and Rome, he didn't even know that black people were already living in Europe. The brothers there, if you take out the brothers there and put in black people, that's what Paul is saying. He's saying, the next day, the south wind came up, and on the following day, we reached Puteoli. There we found some black people. Black people were already living in Europe. Black people were already building synagogues in Europe, in Puteoli, in Italy. in Rome. This is to Paul's astonishment. This is to Paul's surprise. He's like, wow. I was thinking Europe was all white people. I was thinking that Europe was all Europeans. I didn't even know that black people have already lived in Europe. I didn't even know that black people were the first people to ever live in Europe. He's surprised. He's astonished. He wasn't expecting this. I read it again. The next day, the south wind came up. They're sailing all the way from Africa. And on the following day, we reached Puteoli. That's in Italia. There we found some brothers. There we found some brothers, some black people who invited us to spend a week with them. Oh my God. Paul is thinking after the shipwreck, after he thought he was going to die, he was thinking I was going to meet some strangers in Europe. He said, there, we found some brothers who invited us to spend a week with them. And so we came to Rome. Even when we came to Rome, that's what he's saying, the capital of Italy. In Acts chapter 28, verses 15, he said, as we got to Rome, the brothers there had heard that we were coming. There was already black people living in Rome, building synagogues. Knowing about African history. They were even waiting for Paul to come. They've heard about him. Paul said in verse 15, the brothers, that's the black people, they had heard that we were coming, and they traveled as far as the Forum of Appius and the three taverns to meet us. At the sight of these men, Paul thanked God and was encouraged. At the sight of these men, in verse 15. At the sight of these men, Paul thanked God. Why would Paul thank God? I mean, if you're gonna go and preach the word of God in a different city, and you get there and you see people there, you don't have to thank God, because people are people. But here in Acts 28 verses 15, it says, at the sight of these men, Paul thanked God and was encouraged. Paul thanked God and was encouraged because he's seen people that look exactly like him. Paul never knew that black people were living in Europe. When we got to Rome, Paul was allowed to live by himself with a soldier to guard him. But that's not what I'm teaching. What I'm teaching is that Paul was surprised. This apostle of Jesus Christ, this apostle of God. This is one of the acts of the apostles. He said, as we sailed, as we got shipwrecked, as we were almost thrown off the ship, as the storms were coming, as we were scared, we were confused, we got to Cyprus. We left Jerusalem. We left the black country. We left the African country. We didn't even know where we was heading to. We were heading to Europe for the very first time. We were tossed to and fro. He said the captain of the ship was even playing games. He said he knew his destination was Europe, but he didn't know who he was going to meet in Europe. It could have been a situation where he got to Europe and all was there was animals. It's possible because there was a time when Europe was void and no human beings were living in Europe. There was times when only animals were living in Europe. So Paul didn't know what to expect. I'll read it to you again. From Acts 28 verses, let's take it from verse 11. He said, after 3 months, oh my God, After 3 months, we put out to sea in a ship that had wintered in the island. These people were sailing all the way from Jerusalem. Oh my God. Trying to get to Europe for 3 months. They were in the sea. It was an Alexandrian ship with the figurehead of a twin god, and Castor and Pollux. We put in at Syracuse and stayed there 3 days. From there we set sail and arrived in Rhegium. You see, they stop on one island. They go back into the sea. They stop in another island. It wasn't a pretty straightforward journey. They were scared, man. He said, from there we set sail again and arrived at Rhegium. The next day, the south wind came up. In those days, there was no aeroplanes. It's not like you can go to Heathrow Airport and get an aeroplane and fly from Mexico to France or from Germany to Ghana. No, it wasn't like that in those days. In the days of Apostle Paul, there was no aeroplanes. The only means of transport from Africa to Europe was by ship. They suffered. He said, from there we set sail and arrived in Rhegium. The next day, the south wind came up. Oh God. And on the following day, we reached Puteoli. Puteoli is like an Italian word. So they're getting to Italy now. They're in Europe. There we found some brothers. When they got to Europe, they found some brothers. Paul is saying where he came from and where he left. He was heading into a stranger's country. He didn't know where he was going to. But he said when he got there, they found some brothers in Europe. Black people were already living in Europe. Or black people were the first people to ever live in Europe. But you don't know it. Go to the south of Italy, go to the south of Spain, go to the south of Greece, go to the south of all these Mediterranean countries. You will know that black people were the first people to ever live in Europe. Paul was shocked. He was astonished. He was surprised. And the ship arrived in Puteoli. There we found some brothers, in verse 14, who invited us to spend a week with them. This gave Paul even more hope. And so we came to Rome. The brothers there had heard that we were coming. The brothers that were living in Europe already, the black people that were living in Europe already, heard that Paul was coming. And they traveled as far as they could to meet up with us. Paul said, at the sight of seeing these black men in Europe, in Rome, in Puteoli, Paul fell on his knees and thanked God, and he was encouraged. Another word for encouraged is strengthened. Paul was at peace with himself. Oh my God. It's like sometimes Pastor Jimba Alex, I go to preach all over the world. I don't know who I'm going to meet. When I went to Poland, I didn't know who I was going to meet. When I went to Paris, I didn't know who I was going to meet. When I went to Amsterdam, I didn't know who I was going to meet. When I went to Wales, I didn't know who I was going to meet. When I went to Liverpool, I didn't know who I was going to meet. When I went to the south coast of Italy, I didn't know who I was going to meet. But Apostle Paul said when he got to Puteoli in Europe, in Italy, he said, there we found brothers. There we saw black people. I'm going to end this here. Because you've got the message. I just want to say that the topic for today is black people were the first people to ever live all around the world. And my topic today is actually teaching you that black people were the first people to ever live in Europe. My name is Pastor Jimba Alex. You've been watching Gospel Faith Television UK. I just want to say I love you. You can share my videos. You can like my videos. We can learn from one another. You can find me on Gospel Faith Television UK. You can find me on YouTube as Pastor Jimba Alex.